Right. So this panel is about self-publishing your own comic or manga, original English manga. Basically, it's just the whole concept of creating your publication from beginning to end, from conception to distribution and getting it out there. So, welcome to the panel. And what I wanted to say is that our booth is at 817. So for the rest of the convention at Anime Expo, please come to Ego Manga's booth in the exhibit hall 817 to partake in our content, our comics, our artwork, digital content, all that, or just talk to any of us on stage for any portfolio reviews if you want to get your content reviewed by us. And I also wanted to mention is that our content is on Steam. We have a summer sale, 70% off. So anything about our games, our DLCs, digital content is on there. So all you need to do is just do a Steam search of Ego Manga and take part of the 70% off Steam sale that's going on there. And also, the comics that we have on our platform, we have a distribution platform called Comics Distro. It's 30% off. And also, I assume you guys are want to be publishers, one of their creators. This is also a platform where you can sell your comic books on our platform that goes to stores. So it's Comic Distro. I'll talk more about that in our panel, but it's 30% off our contents there. And also, so basically this panel is about, I'm referencing a recent comic book that I worked on. It's called Swipe of the Fox. I'm going to reference two comics that I worked on. It was like a full year production of it. Swipe of the Fox is an original English language manga done by me and also created with NBA star De'Aaron Fox. He plays for the Sacramento Kings, and if you know him, he's an avid anime fan. He loves Dragon Ball Z, and we had a lot of fun working on this together for him. And also, I'm referencing, well, this is more of the content for Swipe of the Fox. Basically, a little story about it is basically De'Aaron Fox plays himself in a video game. He wears a virtual reality suit, and he plays like a test play basketball game, and he gets stuck inside, and he has to use his basketball skills to play his way out of it. So that's a comic that I worked on with De'Aaron, and we will talk about how we put it together and got it released out. Also, I'll be discussing another comic, Vanguard Princess. It's a comic book based off of a video game that I showed you, well, I mentioned earlier. This is what I worked on with, it's based off of video games on Steam. And we made an original video comic book from the game. I wrote it and I worked with a writer, his name is Mino Miyabi. He actually did a panel today, a few days ago at AX. But Vanguard Princess, the fighting game, is basically about, it's an all-girl fighting game, but the society is run by women. And basically, it's a society filled by women, and they duel and they have a society. So if you play the game, you'll know the story about the game, but also check out the comic as well. And Michelle, she has her own comic that.
Yeah, so I make the comic Centrali 2050. It is a cyberpunk mystery comic. It is about a girl named Midori who wakes up in this high-tech metropolis with no memories of her own, but what she does have is a psychic connection to a missing child. So currently, I have volume 1 out, and I've got a few flyers some people might have found, but we are also doing volume 2 this summer. So I'm just here to talk a little bit about my process making these comics.
Yeah, so we come from two different backgrounds when it comes to getting our comics out there, so I wanted to give you my perspective as a publisher, and Michelle will give you her perspective as well. So whatever works for you is fine. So basically, let's get started. So the journey. We will talk about building your team, financing the creative parts. Creative means writing, illustration, all that, and publishing, marketing, distribution, and sales. We're gonna get it out there. So let's just start it with building your team. So with Swipe of the Fox comic, this is my team. Me, De'Aaron Fox, Natasha, and Andy, we worked on it together. So the key roles for your team, you need a writer, you need an illustrator, obviously. if you can't do it, you need a colorist and letterer for your work. But for manga, not many people use color for their work, but these are those key roles for your project. And just keep that in mind. So in my case, when I worked on the Vanguard Princess, it was just myself and Mino Miyabi. I did the writing and I did the lettering and editing. Mino Miyabi did the artwork. He did the coloring as well. So it's just a two-person team for the Vanguard Princess project. So, like I mentioned before, these are the primary roles that you need for your team. So if you can all do, if different people can do different roles, great. But if you can consolidate with 2 people, that's fine too. So Michelle, what about your team? How's your team made?
Well, I am the writer, the illustrator, the letterer, and the publisher. So I am the team. I do have my partner who makes his own comic, which we just kind of workshop our stuff together. But yeah, I'm basically the team. I will say that I know a lot of people are, either one or the other. They're the writer or they're the artist. I would say if you're someone who is looking to, hire out those other roles, the most important thing to understand is that nobody loves your project as much as you do. So unless you literally conceived the story from the beginning with another person, you're gonna wanna, make sure that you have the budget to pay fairly to, whoever else is on your team. Because yeah, at the end of the day, your project is fueled by your own passion, but you can't count on it. You need to pay people to keep them around, and that's just how it goes.
All right, well, good point. Actually, I'm glad you brought it up because when you have a team, it's very important to have an agreement in place.
Yes.
Like contracts or some type of have that stuff in writing. Whether it's or examples are NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, or freelance agreements, because basically you just want to make sure that everybody knows the terms and conditions of the project. It's very easy for feelings to get hurt or miscommunication when it comes to payment or ownership of rights, just a lot of any type of issues. So I would say this is the most unpleasant part of the process, but it's very important to have this in place, especially when you're among friends. You gotta have an agreement in place. So a lot of people can't afford lawyers, I understand that. So there's a lot of places like lulu.com that have templates, legal binding templates that you can use, that you can modify. But I do recommend getting an attorney, but if you can't, there's also strong templates out there works as well. And freelance agreements, these are if you're working with an artist, you're paying a higher artist, so you make sure that you have that in place. Some artists they have some conditions. It depends on the artist you work with. Some artists don't care about copyright, others have copyright issues or a lot of specific terms unique to them. But nonetheless, it's important to have an agreement with your team, whether it's a commissioned person or just collaborations with people. So I'll just move forward with that. Out of the way. So once you have those plans, what I do for Swipe with a Fox with my team of 4 is that we had an action plan just to make sure that we just kind of break down the schedule for the production of the comic and the release and all that stuff. So for Swipe with a Fox, we had an annual action plan, and we broke things by quarter. Like the first quarter, as you can see, we just formed a basic story. We created basic marketing art. The second quarter, we did a press release. We started on the comic. Third and fourth quarter, we worked on a comic and ultimately released it and all that. So your time frame is your time frame. You can take a year, you can take 5 years or 6 months. It's up to you, but it's important for the good of your team to have an action plan so that you guys know you can organize better. All right, so with that in mind, budgeting and financing. So I would say definitely Kickstarters are a very great phenomenon. Kickstarter, Indiegogo, those are great platforms for you to to budget, to raise funds for your projects, for your concept, your comic project, and it's very effective. You want to comment about that, or from your side?
Yeah, so I've done a couple of Kickstarter campaigns now. I would say if you've never done a Kickstarter before, where you really want to start is, there's a lot of, how do I run a Kickstarter? You can Google that. Kickstarter themselves even has, resources for the basics. But also, I would say take some time to look at both very successful Kickstarters and also ones that flopped, because you want to know, okay, like what do I want to emulate and what do I want to avoid. I would say that the most effective Kickstarters are for things that are like already existing. So if it's like, hey, Kickstart, like this is funding so I can, have money to make the comic that doesn't exist yet, those ones tend to not work out so great. But if you are like, okay, I have the thing, or I have a solid plan to, make the book by this date, people who are pledging to Kickstarters, they want to feel confident that like the thing's going to be made. I don't go to Kickstarter personally until I actually have the whole like book ready, and I'm just like, okay, I just need the funds now to actually print the book. You definitely want to also look to other Kickstarters to see, okay, well, how much do they charge, per comic book? What kind of rewards might you want to offer? I would say if you are new to Kickstarter, just try to, not overwhelm yourself with promising too many rewards. Because when it comes time for fulfillment, that can, that can get very overwhelming. It's like, okay, yeah, the project's done, but now I actually have to like ship all the stuff I said I would give people. So, don't come up with like 10 different like reward tiers and stuff. And then, I could honestly talk a whole panel on Kickstarters, but in general, my advice would be to see what people are doing both successfully and the flops, and learn from those.
Right. So basically, Kickstarter is a really good way to get funding and such. As far as finding an artist, let's say if you're not an artist, there's many different resources for you to get an artist for your project. DeviantArt, Fiverr, joining web community groups, even going to Artist Alley. These are great places where you can find artists. I find a lot of my artists for my projects on Facebook. I join community groups, and if there's some art post that I see that I like, I reach out to the artist and say, hey, I'd like to work with you. Can you give me your terms and all that stuff? Same for Artist Alley. I sometimes just go to Artist Alley and see artists that I like, and if I'm interested in it, if I want them to work with me, and I'll just talk to them and ask for their rates. Rates meaning how much do they charge per page. So these are some really good resources for you to find an artist for your project. Okay, so let's say you do that, right? So these are guys for your artists. For me personally, what I do is like I make sure I get a character designs done. It's for my team actually, and it just gets for Swipe of the Fox. Since I had so many different people on my team and so many different ideas, this is like our central source for everything. Like when it's our source for inspiration and everything. So I had the first thing I did is I got this done for the good of my team, my writers, and for the good of the artists, so they can have an idea, a visual idea of the character and things. So I just got the character designs done, and that even helped me with actually when I was finding artists as well. So for my comic, I had this done, and I showed them, I sent this to them, to the artists that I was trying to hire for it, and that was enough for them to get started with the comic illustration work. So, anything you want to add to that?
I already designed my characters like many years ago, so I haven't gone through that process.
Okay, right, multiple perspectives here. So, okay, so the creative writing part, there's several ways to do it, what I've done. I've done a outline basically. Outline is that I just kind of have a conceptual idea of what I want the story to be by page. And then, like for example, I started very on a large scale. Like I say, the first page introduces the character, the last page is the end, and then I just kind of work my way by thinning the pages and such. Like at first, I figured out I want a 22-page comic book, and then first couple pages is just introducing the character. Last couple of pages is the climax and the end, and everything else in the middle it builds up. So that's kind of my overall outline for writing a story. Very generic, very basic. And when I write the outline, I let the artist use their artistry to do their art details. I just trust them with the direction, as long as I give them some type of outline of what I want to do per se. But then there's also a script, a more solid, more straightforward, detailed form of writing. We write the whole thing out, the acts, from beginning to end, and that gives the artist even more help. But either way, it works. But I prefer the outline because I want to trust the artist that I work with and trust their artistry, their style, and all that stuff. But if you really want to get really detailed and down to it, scripts work as well. Okay, so after that, when the artist usually would send a storyboard to me, when they have the script or outline, they have a conceptual idea of what they want to do, and so it's very rough stuff. It's rough sketches. Well, that's a storyboard. It's rough sketches and ideas. And if I'm okay with it, if I say yes, these ideas are great, then they will do more defined lining and defined work. So they just give me just early rough stuff, and it's up to me to change things and yes or no. If not, if I go with it, they will make it. They will put detail into it. So those are pretty much ideas. These are just some sketches that they showed off, and I approve, and they moved forward with it. You have any thoughts on how you do things?
Yeah, so for anyone who maybe came to the How to Draw Manga panel yesterday, this might sound like a bit of a rehash, but when I do thumbnails, and I don't know if you put any of my thumbnails in there, but
No, sorry.
no, it's all good. So what I would say is, the whole purpose of thumbnails is this is where you are brainstorming what is eventually going to be, the finished page. And I would say, this is more like sketch stage, but the previous stage, what you want to do with thumbnails is, you want to keep them loose, you want to keep them general, you're trying to figure out, your compositions, the placement of the characters. If there's dialogue in that panel, you want to make sure that, like we see this top right panel here, oh, I think that's a basketball actually, that was a word balloon. You want to make sure to plan room for your lettering as well, because, something that I find that a lot of novice and aspiring comic artists will do is they will leave the lettering for the end, and you really don't want to do that because you will absolutely always find you did not leave enough room for your balloons. So, thumbnail stage, definitely plan with that space in mind, and sometimes, when you're doing your thumbnails, you'll knock it out of the park on the first one, but chances are, and especially if you're just getting started, you're gonna want to do a couple different takes on each panel. Do I want it to be a low shot, like looking up, or maybe from the eye level, or high up, or do I want the character standing here or there? Just take this time to experiment and not feel too committed to anything. Don't even worry about the quality of the drawing. I mean, my thumbnails get straight up goofy looking, but it's all about finding what works and finding what doesn't before we move into refined sketches.
Right. So that was that. So after that, there's a lettering part. What I do for lettering is that I use balloons, obviously. Comic balloons. I use Photoshop and edit the lettering balloons into my content, my finished work, and. For anime, the fonts I like to use Anime Ace as a font, and any other royalty-free type fonts. Basically, the fonts that I use is that I want to make sure that my letters are easy to read, they're legible. There's enough spacing, so that people can see them clearly and easily. So that's kind of my perspective. And as far as letter balloons, there are many resources you can go to buy letter balloons if you don't want to make your own. Just do a Google search on comic balloons and even lettering comic book fonts and download free or even cheap $5 resources for you to put into your comic book. But yeah, these are just edited into my work. And basically at this point, I would call it finished. The work finished. But there's also sound effects as well. I didn't mention that. Sound effects are more artistic. You did I want to hear your take on sound effects, please.
Yeah, so, and also just on lettering, I was gonna say real quick, alternately, if you have Clip Studio Paint, they also have like a lettering tool like built in, and I find that's what I use in my recent issues of Centralia. It's really great, they're vector based, so you can grow them and shrink them, they don't get all crunchy. They have a couple different presets there. If you use Clip Studio Paint, they also have a free kind of like online shop where you can download resources that other artists have made. So if you're using that program, definitely recommend looking into that. And then, as for sound effects, and the same you can also apply to the balloons in your lettering. You get really creative with the sound effects. Say if there's like a crunch sound, like make the text look like like crunchy, or if it's a splash, maybe the splash sound looks like it's made out of liquid. Consider making your sound effects, a part of your artwork instead of feeling like a separate thing. Because at the end of the day, the comics are a union between art and writing. And in that way, I think we should strive to make them kind of complement each other. And sound effects are kind of really like the perfect in between writing and art. It's kind of where they meet. And it's just a really great way to like add sound to the page and just add more depth to your reader's experience.
I concur. So. Moving on. Let's see. So we talk about that's a creative process, okay? And any final thoughts before we move on?
On lettering,
the creative process.
On the creative, I could.
The creative writing, illustration, finishing sound effects.
I would say just one more thing to keep in mind when you're doing lettering is make sure you leave a comfortable margin around your balloons. You don't want your text like running up to almost touching the sides of the balloons. Just think of it as if there's like a little styrofoam cushion around your words. It makes for a much better reading experience. Oh, and also another resource for fonts. It's just simply called like 1001freefonts.com. You'll find a ton of stuff there for free, so I would check that out too.
Right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Let's see. We don't have a lot of time for questions. We'll take one question before we move on about the creative process. But we've completed. Any questions about it? Okay. Yes, sir.
Can you do a quick survey of the tools that you use during this phase?
Okay, for me, the writing process, we just use a simple Word. Word is simple for the writing process. Outline, what I showed you before, I just use the Office suites, Word, PowerPoint, Excel sometimes. The illustration, I leave that to the artists. They're digital artists, they do their thing, but my part is the editing part. I use Photoshop for fonts, lettering, sound effects, finishing work and all that. Gradients for shading, all that, Photoshop for me.
Yeah, and then when I write scripts, I like to just use like Google Drive because it's the easiest way for me to have it in a shared location where, like I said, my partner who also makes a comic, it's really easy for me to be like, hey, can you take a look at this? It's easy for him to highlight, part of the script and make a little comment note for me to see. I find that just, using something, or, some people use Dropbox, but especially if you're working with a team, you want to have something that is very easy for multiple people to look at and, if needed, edit live, you know, because otherwise you're bouncing like, okay, here's the file, like bounce back and forth in emails, you know, maybe someone doesn't have the latest version, it can get a little bit, you know, clunky. And as I mentioned earlier, for the artwork, I use Clip Studio Paint. Usually when it comes to the thumbnailing, I actually like to do that like pencil and paper on a sketch pad. It just feels like the least committal to me. I mean, sometimes I will thumbnail in Clip Studio, but something about doing it on the computer makes it feel like, I feel like more pressure to be like, make it look good. In like a sketchbook with pencil and paper, I just get sloppy with it, and that's kind of what you want. And then I also use Photoshop for those, like, when it comes to getting the page ready to like upload online, you know, I prefer Photoshop for, it's more like, you know, for me, Clip Studio has a lot of great options for drawing the art, but when it comes to kind of formatting and stuff, I prefer to use Photoshop.
Right, and just to elaborate what she said about team working, we use Zoom and Google Meet when we're having our working sessions. Like my team, they're throughout around the country, Texas and all that, so we use Zoom and screen share to share our work with each other. But thank you very much. We don't have a lot of time for questions towards the end. We will definitely take questions. So let's talk about the publishing part. Okay, so there's multiple ways to publish a comic book. Just some that I thought of right now is that there's, from my experiences, print, you know, like as a physical comic book, digital, obviously through the viewing on the web, on the device. There's mixed media. I've seen digital motion comics. I've seen. Just keep it in mind. Just whatever the future is open for, like the combination of animation and comic book formatting. So there's many different ways. If you want to publish your comic, these are outlets for you to do it in. So let's talk about printing. Printing basically. Okay, so let's say you want to print out your first comic for the next show, and what you have, we already talked about the creative process. You would deliver your work to the printer at a high res, 300 to 600 dpi. That's a very high quality digital files for books, and either you can separate them all into individual TIFF or JPEGs, or you can combine them into all in one PDF. That's what I do, and I send them to the printer, and the printer, as long as you have them in 300 to 600 dpi, sometimes color quality, I don't want to go too advanced, but many printers like CMYK, it allows for better quality books, but some other digital printers some other printers also require RGB. That's like a normal thing, but if I encourage you, from my perspective, just if you're working on your work, remember 600 dpi, CMYK, your format for your books, okay? And if you can, put them all in one PDF file. So there's many ways to do it, but that's just what I do. And I recommend that your first comic, you would just make a small print job. Don't make like 200 copies of your book. I would recommend get at least 10 copies done, so that you can see if there's any errors from the comic, so that you can fix them quickly. Sometimes there's typos or just a lot of visible errors that you want to catch quickly in a small run. So you catch those, and then you reprint catch those, fix those, and reprint a larger run. Also, many printers also give you proofs as well. Proofs is like one sample book. Sometimes they can mail it to you, other times they send it to you via electronic format, but I encourage you just to order a small run, 10 copies, and check it yourself. And then you fix them up, and then you can make a bigger run if you like. So, any thoughts on that?
Okay, yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about my experience with printing. I would say, first of all, you know, from the very beginning, if you have intentions to print your comic, you know, you want to decide that at the beginning, because, you know, if I know that vertical, you know, scrolling comics are also very popular, but if you have any aspirations of printing your comic, that's not how you want to go. So, you know, if you're gonna, you know, decide from the start when you're making your comic, is this gonna be, a book or not? And what, kind of book? Do I want to make like, every kind of book has a different dimension. American comic books have a different dimensions than like manga, so decide that at the beginning for sure. When you're looking at printers, I would say, look around. You can usually order a sample pack of like, they'll mail you like some samples of their, what they offer, and I think that's really important because you want to be able to like physically feel what their product looks like. You want to see like the print quality, and yeah, definitely when it comes time to order your proof, I highly recommend getting a physical proof, just so you can see for yourself before you order a bunch, what's my book going to look like in someone's hands. And once you choose your printer, what you really want to do is almost all printers are going to list on their website the specs that you're going to need to submit to them. So, look those over and just make sure that all your pages conform to that, whatever file size they prefer. And then I'm not familiar with any printers that, the thing is, if you send them RGB work, no matter what, all printers print in CMYK because RGB is a light-based color thing and it's not how printing works. All printers are CMYK, so almost all printers are going to tell you to convert your pages to CMYK so that there's no surprises, once it prints out. Because there are some colors, especially like really bright neon ones that just aren't really achievable, and you don't want to get any kind of like funky surprises. It looks one way on the screen, it comes out looking all different colors. And then, yeah, for color work, 350 DPI is usually going to be enough, because any more than that, you're really not going to feel a difference in the quality. So 350 is good for color. 600 DPI I would just reserve for like black and white ink work, because then it's much clearer, the crispness, but at least you want to have at least 350, whichever one you do. Personally, if it was black and white ink work, I'd probably stick to around 400 DPI. In my opinion, 600 is great if you are printing something that is like the size of like a large poster, but chances are your comic book isn't this big. If it is, I'd love to see it. But chances are, because of the size of the finished work, 350 to 400 will be sufficient.
Right, so we're talking about DPI, 300 to 600 DPI, and also CMYK and RGBs. These things can be set in Photoshop, so I don't want to be too technical. So if you use Photoshop or some type of software, graphic design software, you can set those things there on the system. So that's that. So for marketing, there's several ways to market. So there's online, social media, press releases, buy ads, conventions, mailing lists. We'll go through some of these. So let's see here. Okay, let's start with online marketing. So what you can do is that you can build your own website. The website is probably the optimal place to market your site, because it's you own the website and you can put anything you want for the comic book. Your shopping, you can put a shopping feature on there, you can communicate with your users and all that. It's your own, you own that. But you can also create your own social media page, like a comic page on Facebook or any type of relevant social media platform for your comic. You can also join digital platforms, like for example, Amazon has a shopping cart system where you can sell comics through Amazon, where you can have your users buy and partake in your work there. So that's also like an online store. So it's the same thing. Amazon and online store is the same type of thing. It's a great way, because they both join these platforms. They kind of help you in some ways market your book for you as well. Sometimes, like on Amazon, they can feature your comic on a specific page. Same could be said for some of these other online stores. Online stores, I think a good one is like there used to be something called Comixology. That was a platform before, but if you're looking for, look up, or let's see, Drive Through Comics is another online comic store where you can upload your comics, and it's a store dedicated to selling comic books, and sometimes they can feature work on there. You can also join a lot of social media groups. Facebook has a lot of great comic book groups that you can join where you can upload your comic and make announcements and post your work there on these platforms. If you join a large group, sometimes these groups can be as large as thousands of people. So imagine a fraction of that audience sees your comics through their feeds. So it's a great way to promote your work. And also email marketing, use an email marketing system where you can send out press releases or email announcements to your community. For example, Chimp Monkey is a good example where you can send out email campaigns to your community and such. And you can track the success of your emails as well. So let's talk about PR. All right, so when it comes to, you can announce your comic to professionals, to the comic book media. I would definitely contact editors for various e-zine sites. For example, Comic Book Resources has a website, crc.com, I believe, is a website where it announces comic book news and announcements. And Anime News Network is also a good comic book manga e-zine site. So what you would do for those places, you go to the editors section of Contact Us area of the website. There's always an email for editors or newsrooms or whatever where they're accepting press releases. So you just send an email to these specific email addresses, find the editors or anything related to press releases. Send it out for those places, and then chances are they will announce your book or review your book and feature it on their website. And also, you can also solicit comic reviews. Like you can find editors who's willing to review your comic and make a review and make a posting about it on their website or YouTube channel. So look out for them. Look for them and ask if you can review if you want to review my comic. Give them a digital copy, or you can mail them if you want to. And when I send out press releases for my comics, I send them out periodically. I don't want to bombard people with my work. So normally whenever I have something important to say about my comic, I would send it out. I don't just, the mistake that I did is I sent out a comic book, like a press release every 2 weeks, and nobody likes that. So just send it out when it's important to you, when you have an important announcement about the comic. Before, like announcing a comic, send out a press release, let's say maybe a few months later about the comic is coming out soon. Another press release about it's in stores, go buy it, and just any important stuff. So press releases are very important because they will go into a very big websites, and it's also free. You don't have to pay to get a platform on an Anime News Network site. They'll just take your press release and put it on their website. I mentioned before, don't spam. Editors don't like that. These resources don't like that. And also, you should definitely proofread your press releases, because many times these platforms, they will just copy and paste your press release, and if there's any spelling errors on there, it's on there. It's your mistake, not theirs. So just make sure you edit your work there well. And another part about marketing is your mailing list. This is your own community. So you send announcements, you send out updates and features about your comic book to your team, your fans. So you can have a mailing list sign up on your website. You can solicit sign-ups at conventions. You can have a sheet where people sign their email addresses and say, I want to join your press releases. And when you do that, you can also, when you have your mailing list, you should group them. For me, for example, I have a mailing list for fans, I have a mailing list for press, and I have a mailing list for industry people. So I send out specific press releases or announcements that specific markets. Like if I need to send out an announcement for retailers, I send out for them, because the information for retailers is not the same for fans or for the press. So just keep that in mind. And I'll just speed up. don't spam. Nobody likes that. Proofread your press releases, and also make it very easy for your subscribers to unsubscribe, because sometimes they hate it when they try to unsubscribe for your press release or your mail list, but they can't. They really hate that, and so make it easy for them to unsubscribe if they don't want to receive your mails anymore. You have any thoughts?
Yeah, so I'll back up to earlier where you're talking about website. I definitely agree that if you are a comic artist, it's a really good idea to just have like a dedicated space that you have control over to publish your comic on. And that's a kind of a two-step process of you're gonna want to find a host, and then separately you're gonna want to find the actual website service. So for me, I use a hosting provider called DreamHost, and then through them I host my website on WordPress. WordPress is a really popular one because there are plugins that you can use that basically make it kind of really streamline the whole posting your comic thing. Tootchke is a really good one for WordPress. That's spelled Toochke. I would say right now that's probably the best plugin for comic artists. But yeah, other ones you might use are Squarespace, Wix, and it's a good idea also to mirror your comic to other places. For Centralia, I mirror it onto Tapastic. There's also Webtoons, and the thing is, I always encourage people to have their own website though, because those platforms, they can change their rule at any moment. They can, say, oh, we can't have whatever content you have in there, or they might make decisions that just, kind of impact you negatively as an artist. So that's why I always say, have a spot that is, under your control. And then as for, self-promotion, personally, I mostly use, right now I'm mostly using Twitter and Instagram. I'm too old and grouchy right now to use TikTok. I'm still trying to figure that out. But if you know how to, if you like TikTok, awesome, use that. What I would say is, don't burn yourself out trying to be on every single platform. Find the ones that work for you, and be realistic about the ones that maybe aren't getting you the traction that you want. Because like I said, you just don't want to be spinning your wheels and then you get 1 or 2 likes. It's the amount of effort you're putting in is not, worth the return. And maybe part of that, if that does happen to you, maybe part of it is just okay, well, I need to maybe reassess. Am I doing all that I can to reach people? And if you are and it's still just not working out, find another platform. Because the thing is, every social media outlet kind of has a different kind of vibe or crowd there. So find where your crowd is and really focus there. As far as promoting your work, we all hate the algorithm. Unfortunately, the best way to stay in people's eyes is to post often, which is why I encourage people to throw up a work in progress or a sketch, or people love to engage with you as a person. So maybe ask questions to them, or just post cute pictures of your pets. People, they don't only want to get to know your comic, they also want to get to know you as a creator. So I encourage people to be personable. And I used to make the mistake of, I don't want to show my process. I just want them to see it when it's done. But in my experience, people actually really love seeing those rough sketches. So just constantly be sharing your work. Get people interested. If this is a story that you're writing yourself, drop little information about that world. And then the last thing I'll say is another outlet you can use that I like to use as far as an online shop goes is Ko-fi. So that's ko-fi.com, and you can use that not only to accept donations for your art, but you also can set up your shop there.
Right. Thank you very much. So we're just going to lastly go into the marketing for comic book conventions. So for comic book conventions, you can definitely like Comic Cons out there. You should get an artist alley table. You can also partner with another company to exhibit with them. Apply to panels like this as well. Panels are really good to talk about. This is where we're able to promote and market our comics, and request for press release for comic owners. Yeah, I'm gonna go into detail, but these are some ideas for marketing at comic book conventions as well. So more about conventions is like, for this example, this is an example of, this is my booth at Anime Expo a year ago, and this is my booth at Comic Con a year ago as well. So booths are really good places to promote your work and sell and showcase your work to the audience. Panels are also important as well. We're talking about publishing, we're talking about self-published comics here, but we're also talking about our comics as well. So this is a great opportunity to promote your work and all that. So just ask to get on a panel or participate in one, and that's how you do it, a good way to promote. This is from Comic Con and Anime Expo about a year ago, promoting both comics that I discussed earlier. We don't have time for questions. Sorry, got a couple minutes. At the booth, we'll answer all your questions later. So for distribution platforms, we mentioned Kindle and Amazon and Kickstarter. These are good platforms for you to sell your comics online, digitally, and print as well.
Yeah, if we're just wrapping up here, I'd say, we're at the end of the day for exhibitors, but if you're around tomorrow, please come stop by the booth. It's 807?
817.
817 in the exhibitor hall. And yeah, Austin's got all of his books there. We also have a fantastic artist, Jetty Show on Instagram. Maybe you follow him. He's got beautiful prints there. And then I have copies of Centralia available for sale, as well as samples you can leaf through. I would absolutely, love if you want to stop by the booth and talk about comics. If you want to show me any of your work for like a portfolio review, you can talk to Austin. He can schedule portfolio review slots. Yeah, I would love to see your stuff, and yeah, I'd be honored if you wanted to come and take a look at Centralia at the booth. So that's, you say the number because I keep forgetting it.
817.
817.
Right, so we talked about digital distribution. I also want to remiss that I mentioned I showed this fighting game earlier. I have a Kickstarter for we made the comic book is based off the game that we're working on. So we're doing a Kickstarter campaign to finish the production of the game and comic. The comic will be a part of it. So just if you want to just scan a QR code if you want to join the campaign, that'd be awesome. Also, we're gonna go talk more about conventions. If you want to exhibit at a convention, sell your comics there, you'll need a seller's permit. So California seller's permit, that won't, like AX won't let you exhibit on the floor, or Comic-Con, for example, without a permit. These are very free. Just go to your local state office, tax office, and ask for a seller's permit. Write one up, and every year you write a tax report about how much money you've earned from your books at these shows. But it's important if you're going to exhibit at Comic-Con or AX to get a seller's permit. And let's talk about stores, distribution for stores. There's two ways. There's direct market and mass market. So direct market is mostly comic book stores, where you sell your books in comic book stores, and mass market is obviously